Welcome to New Broker, the podcast dedicated to providing insights and inspiration for building a new broking business.
Hello and welcome back. I'm your host for today, Annie Kane. And in this week's episode on New Broker, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to be doing a deep dive into something a bit unusual in that we're talking to someone who's been in the broking industry for over a decade, but only recently made the move to working in a broking business herself. Now, many listeners will likely know our guest today, Andrea McNaughton, otherwise known as Ange, who was previously the Group Executive and Managing Director for LMG Residential and an instrumental leader in the loan market group's growth between 2015 and 2025, helping shape the direction of the franchise and aggregation group at a national level. But recently, Ange stepped into the broking space herself as the Managing Director of Loan Market down in St Kilda, but not as a writing broker. So in this episode, we're finding out what it is that she does nowadays, how she's made the move from corporate executive roles to the daily pressures of broking, and what it looks like being a non-writing director in a broking model after having been in charge of a major broking group for so long. Thanks for joining me, Ange. How are you going?
I'm really well. Thank you, Annie. And thanks so much for the invitation. I've been a long-time listener, so it feels like a full circle moment. So it's great to be here.
Exciting for me to be able to do this podcast with you. And I think to showcase all the myriad ways there are to get into the broking industry. And I love it when we see people who are in corporate roles in the broking industry actually make the move in, kind of take the step over the fence into broking itself. So walk us through, for anyone who's not had the pleasure of meeting you, Ange, I mean, we know you from when you were in the executive position at LMG, but before that you were at Ray White. Walk us through your kind of career potted history.
Well, like lots of people, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished school. And unfortunately, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished uni. And I ended up saying the answer must be in travel. So I moved home to save up to travel. And I ended up getting a job at a local real estate office, or almost local. And they were just transitioning from Elders Group to Ray White. And so I was really fortunate at the time that I got into an organisation, I think that was really strong on training. And so I was really able to shadow good performers, get trained up and get into the real estate world. I loved that. And then after I did that for something like 10 years and worked through business development roles and leadership roles and became the CEO for Ray White in Victoria, I realised sort of across the fence, as you say, was this loan market business, finance business sitting. And I was always really drawn to their knowledge and how they worked, but we didn't do a lot together. Then I ended up following Sam White, who is the director and the White family owning both businesses, obviously, into that model, which was just so similar to what I'd done in real estate in terms of that franchise model with the non-traditional sort of no boundaries, no territories, and really able to grow a really big business. So I really loved that and I loved my time there. And I quickly found that in real estate, it can be really difficult to find somebody who's looking to sell. But in lending, I think there's always somebody with debt, it's a lot easier to find. And I just really loved that value proposition of the broker, I think, a lot more than I did the real estate proposition. I felt like it's a more cognitive challenge, I guess, if that's a fair statement, around writing loans as opposed to selling houses. I loved selling houses. I've never actually written a loan, which obviously we'll get to, but I found the model of growing the business, growing a big team, leading people, making people productive. I enjoyed that challenge. And I think the proposition of the broker being able to genuinely help customers throughout their lifetime was a very rewarding one. So that's how I started in the loan market side of the business.
Yeah. And of course, you were in the kind of corporate head office, so really helping grow LMG, and went through a really interesting time as well, with the PCF acquisition, Plan Choice Fast acquisition, having, building the loan market brand out, kind of having the different models. So when you look at like over your kind of career at the loan market group at LMG, what kind of things were you doing then? Like when you were like, the LMG executive for residential, what exactly did that involve?
Yes. Yeah. That was my last role just before I left. So that was really around looking at the business model and trying to drive differentiation between what a broker or a business owner wants and then what they get. So looking at those different models of support, I guess, around aggregation. When I was the managing director for Loan Market, that model was something we lived and breathed, and we were always an aggregator, but we were sort of first and foremost a business builder, if you like. And that was very similar to that Ray White model. Whereas aggregation, I wasn't aware that, there's so many other options under an aggregator around what you want, what role you want that aggregator to play. Some people want them to be hands-on and really help around lead generation and growing your business, and others see them more as almost a clearinghouse for commissions. And of course, you've got specialist aggregators on top of that. So when I was across the executive role for residential, that was really about driving revenue from the growth of all of the residential loans that the group wrote, how we would diversify that revenue, how we would continue to grow that revenue, and what business model did we really want to try and disrupt and grow with across those different brands.
Yeah.
So that was really my role then.
And so, I mean, a lot of great experience and expertise to bring to your current role, where you're now working in an actual loan market franchise. So down in St Kilda in Melbourne. How did this journey come about?
Well, we had a very big acquisition with the shift, obviously, to LMG, the aggregator. And that was sort of in full flight. And we were running pretty hard, and that was a terrific challenge. And then right before our first Growth Summit, which was literally the first event that was bringing the whole team together, unfortunately, I got diagnosed with blood cancer. And that was a massive shock and out of the blue, like it is for so many people. And I think sort of sprinting pretty hard. It was the middle of November 2023 and a month to diagnose me. So I sort of felt like I hit a brick wall very hard. Sam, of course, somebody I've worked with for 20 years, and the executive team were terrific support, and absolutely a lot of members of the whole LMG group. But those things take time to work through. You don't know how you're going to come through treatment. You don't know how you're going to respond. And for me, I flew through the treatment, which was sort of a 6 to 8 treatment plan before a stem cell transplant. But it left me with a lot of time. I couldn't travel during that period, and I was, very hands-on in my previous role. So I studied. I went back to uni and looked at leading digital transformation, which was interesting, and tried to keep myself busy and made my list about extreme clarity. What am I going to do differently when I get back to being awesome? And I really missed work and missed all the people and missed the challenge and the growth and the culture of being part of a team. I'm married to a sheep farmer, so we're quite isolated on a rural property, which is nice for well-being and for getting back to nature when you're not well. But it's also pretty isolating and lonely, I think, for somebody who's used to being around so many people and so many great people. So that was when I was really clear and thought, my son's getting to a certain age, my daughter's, boarding school. What do I want to do with this next piece? And I'd always thought about being a business owner, even at Ray Wide. I looked at a couple of opportunities, and I thought, I was 48 at the time. If I don't do it now, I won't do it. So I thought, I'll bite the bullet. I've seen how these, as you say, into so many great businesses, so many different models. I want to be a broker. So that led me to choosing my model. And I started being a loan market broker from the 1st of July last year. I called my entity, the business entity, the Brokerlution, trading as just loan market, because I really wanted a broad digital model so I can be a national brand and also look for a local opportunity. But I quickly discovered I was going to be a pretty poor broker because I just didn't know enough. A lot of my friends were self-employed, and they were coming to me saying, hey, what should I do about this? And I had absolutely no idea in terms of, the right qualifying question. Even, I had lots of people saying, look, just call me Ange and say, what would you do in a scenario like this? But it was literally like hammer to nail stuff. And I thought, this is just going to take me way too long to get up. So I used to leading and running a big business. I think I know how to do that. I know how to grow. I need to back myself in it and do that. And so I said about, some really great businesses coming onto the market with the first wave of brokers retiring and looking at succession. And I thought, what are the ones where I resonate with the values, and which ones do I know well, and their teams and their culture, and what are the opportunities that would suit me? And really that's how I got started. So ended up, as you say, purchasing Loan Market Razor, as known internally or mostly internally, from Toby Edmonds, who has been a member of the Loan Market Group for 18 years and a broker. And so now we have 27 people in that team with 12 brokers, and I've just finished our first month as the business owner in March. So it's been a wild ride. It's been.
There's a lot to unpack there, so thank you, Ange, for giving us that journey and
the speed version.
Yeah, so great to see you back on tools again, and I'm so glad that you've kind of gone through that journey and managed to come out the other side, and hopefully, touch wood, things continue that way for you. But as you say, I think it's really interesting hearing you talk about, quite honestly and openly about broking is not all that people think it is. And I think so often in our New Broker Academy, whenever we talk to new brokers, people come into the industry and they think it's one thing and they start doing it and go, what on earth is this? It's, not what the training necessarily prepared me for. It's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And it's a lot more time consuming before you get, paid. So I think it's really refreshing to hear you kind of be like, you know what, I started trying to do that and then realizing it's not my strength and not what I was wanting to do quickly. So moving to actually do more of the kind of the business operations side, which is what you're doing now at Low Market Razor. Sitting in St Kilda. So I think that's really great to hear. And I think that's such a perfect example of not everyone in this industry needs to be a loan writer. You can be a loan admin. You can be someone who's doing administration. You can be doing something that is operations. You can be doing managing director type stuff, which is what you're doing now. So what exactly does that entail?
So for me, coming into an established existing team, Razor do about 1,500 loans a year. So really successful business. So I'm conscious of the contractors that are in there that are brokers that are pretty much running a business within a business, leveraging the support, it's a very good team there in place. So I've been very sort of gently, would you like coaching? Would you not like coaching? What do you want help with? What is your strategy? What's your plan within the plan? So an average week for me looks like my one-on-ones, which are either half an hour or an hour, depending on what the team would like, really coaching them around their plan. What does your strategy look like? What are your goals? Are they high enough? How are you going to get there? What support do you need? That part of it is just a joy, really. I've always done that role with small business owners, I suppose. So doing that with your own team is great. The bigger piece that I'm spending a lot more time on right now is really implementing AI, looking at how and where we put that into the process. And that's been a lot of fun doing that from the ground up with the team. I learned a lot with Michael Zavelberg when he was at Loan Market as Lean Six Sigma. And I think it's put us in a really good spot. I've managed to poach back a bit of our talent to help me really redesign those journeys, which then it's really delighting the team because they can see I'm trying to take the manual out. We're going to make it a more frictionless way of writing loans, which is what everybody wants. So being really close to the customer and close to the people doing it, I really think helps that implementation. And thirdly, I'm spending a lot of time with referrers. I've loved being back out there with agents, which was, something I used to relish doing and obviously a space I know really well. So we've just launched Love Your Landlord in Victoria. It is a horrific time to be a property owner, investor. So it's been really warmly received for a lot of Ray White agencies and non-Ray Whites. I mean, principals that have that asset in their rent roll that want to offer a service that makes sure landlords can reduce their costs, particularly with interest rates rising and, the budget being handed down in May. We just don't know what that looks like around negative gearing, capital gains tax. So being able to offer a really positive, proactive service with a broking team that already has scale is just awesome to be out there. In the past, when I've gone to referrals, it can be quite hard as an aggregator or a franchisor because you're trying to encourage and influence and cajole for a small percentage, as opposed to being a direct owner. I can guarantee the experience that they're going to get. So that's really how I'm spending my week at the moment. It's been fun.
And I think it's really interesting to see this because I think particularly for a lot of brokers that sort of start out, often there'll be a sole trader, then they might hire one or two, offshore or onshore support staff part-time, then they bring in on like full-time people. And then they start going, oh my goodness, I'm now an actual kind of manager, an HR person, and I'm having to do all this work and I don't have time to also do the loan writing. And so we often see in the scaling process, lots of brokers thinking, well, what do I do now? And how do I build this business? And for so many people, it's going, well, actually, I need to bring in someone just to head up the operations, just to do the continuous improvement work because I'm not able to as a writing broker. Do you think it's feasible for people to like do everything? Or do you think there's like a cap at where you get to a certain size and you can't do it anymore?
That's right. I think where is that cap and what is that blueprint? I think it is pretty impossible. Toby, the business owner that I bought from, he's going to write 200 million this year. He's got a team of 27 people who are all producing as well. It is just too much. And, we're sort of saying, why don't you diversify? And why don't you implement AI? And why don't you go into commercial? And, you've got big client bases. The phone does ring at this size. I had the client call me yesterday, which I'm very rusty. It was hilarious. So it is a real art form and science. And you cannot, that was one of the reasons that Toby was selling. You just cannot do more. This business is literally bursting at the seams. And I would call myself probably the head of sales in terms of the current role, in terms of how that looks. I don't have an official title or anything, but my responsibility, I think, is to make the brokers that are there more productive, make the business more profitable, and to help push the growth. I'm so fortunate Toby wants to stay on. So, there's an established culture there and he's very much the leader of that and a big producer. So we know it's around who else do we want to bring in and who else wants to catch, chase down that growth. There's some excellent performers in there. So yeah, just I have the capacity, as you say, and really the obligation as an on-writing director, because I'm not bringing in any revenue from writing loan, to go out and look at implementing those other services like conveyancing, like buyers advocacy, like bringing in-house specialists like commercial and asset, etc. I don't know how you can possibly do it when you're writing loans and the client is constantly pulling you back into the fire. And, he's got an excellent team and they do a really great job, but it is just an intent, full-on caper. And trying to upskill at the same time or learn new skills is really difficult. So, yeah, I do think you're right. I think this model of non-writing and this consolidation across the industry will be that result of there's only so much growth you can push with one, a one-man sort of model, if you like.
Yeah, and I think this is something that, we talk about this a lot with our events on the advice. Obviously, Better Business Summit this year, it's focused around scaling. And we actually had a really interesting question when we went to Queensland where someone put their hand up and we were like, is it okay if I don't want to grow? I'm happy where I am. Yeah. And I was like, the whole point of this life is to be happy. If you're happy, keep doing what you're doing. We're not telling you have to scale, but if you want to, this is how you might be able to do it. And of course, there's still inspiration you can pull from so many different speakers anyway, regardless of whether it's about scaling or if it's just generally about how you run your business. But I thought that was such an interesting point, people being like, do I have to? Because I'm good. It's like, well, then no.
You definitely don't have to. I think, and it's the same building a team. Not everybody wants to, work 1,000 hours a week or run 100 miles an hour. I think, are they happily achieving what they want? And are they, I do think brokers miss how much they can write more easily, because I think the old model is a burnout model. Mm-hmm. If it's just putting on more, and you're taking on salaries and straits and overhead stress, that's why I think a lot of brokers do say, I'm happy where I am, because you get your trail to a position that it's paying your liabilities, your mortgage, your school fees. I get it. And people say that's enough. I think that piece that I've been enjoying about redesigning, using some really cool new, tech and other, even just making simple changes. I agree. If you don't make it easier for people to write more, then they will write less. I agree with that. Or the same, I should say.
Yeah. And when you just sort of mentioned as well about, when you kind of started broking, you're a bit like, actually, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. It's not my strong point. Was there anything like specific about, like, did you ever actually settle a loan?
No, I didn't even lodge one.
Yeah.
I started getting my accreditations with the lenders, and I mean, it's sort of embarrassing to a bit, but I started going, they don't actually want me to flog their credit cards, do they?
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, because in my mind, being really frank, customer acquisition is everything. It's still king in whatever model you're in, I think, AI, tech, whatever industry. And so I am surprised still, after all my years, since 2015 being in the industry, that the value of that broker proposition and the value of working with a broker is probably still not really well understood. Mm. And I thought, brokers are literally providing this amazing services measured by NPS and, the lack of churn on books, etc. I think I can build a really exciting business by attracting those people that are great at looking after customers. But to do that, I think you need to have great knowledge. I think you need to be really confident. I think you need to be great with clients, which a lot of people are. It was just going to take me way too long. And I think, like you were alluding to before, there's this constant challenge of this chicken and egg in the industry. Should I put on staff that will help me write more volume? Do I wait till I have more volume, but then I disappoint the client or the referrer? It just never ends. And as you said, Annie, unfortunately, you end up being like an accidental leader because you have to hire staff just to manage what you've got. And then if for any reason that staff member leaves you, I've seen brokers take that really personally. It's a massive hit, like a claw. So I think having the mindset and the resilience when you're already dealing with so many clients, so many lenders and so many issues a lot of the time, it's really difficult also then trying to scale a business in the background. So I think any new broker starting now, and we spoke a lot about this actually with people like Kirsty Dunphy and Sarah Thompson and at the Leading Ladies Conference, is be in an office or where you're surrounded by a lot of scenarios. If you start on your own or in a very, very small team with one person, I just don't think you're going to get the breadth of experience around those scenarios to understand how to help the client. And I think nobody wants to let down the client. I think that's everybody's great big fear. That's why they look for certainty from lenders. So getting over that fear is difficult and takes time. And I didn't want to spend the time. And I felt like I didn't have the time. I thought, I know a source of great brokers. I'll go and get the brokers.
Yeah. And so you mentioned there about, like kind of being surprised at like the accreditation process and lenders still kind of being like, we want you to increase share of wallet or whatever it may be. Is there anything else that surprised you along the way where you were like, this is not what I thought it was after, 10 years of working in the broking industry and kind of being in the thick of it?
Well, I should have had more empathy about when I was always challenging them and pushing them around. Why are you diversifying? Why haven't you recruited this person? And why haven't you run this event? And why are you just, there's just the capacity, is just not there. They're highly productive individuals. And I think particularly since COVID, I saw the volumes, that came out of that. And we scrambled quickly to try to introduce things like Broker Force, which was offshore support and all those things. But he was just exhausted. And, and as a company, you're just pushing growth, because we were always ambitious and that was our model. It's as a percentage-based model, you're really partnering around, we've got to keep driving that growth. And I have, made a few apologies around, always sort of pushing for more. And yeah, I wasn't comfortable, I suppose, just not knowing what you're talking about. The people who are coming to you at a really crucial moment of their life around refinancing their business. I mean, I've always referred to brokers, so I know plenty of good commercial brokers and resi brokers, etc. But I'm supposed to be creating a living out of this. I can't just live off referral fees. So I thought this model is not going to work for me.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break here, Ange. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about some of the things you've been doing to actually improve productivity. You kind of touched on them, some of the things there, kind of tools and tech you're using, what you think about AI in the broking industry, and we'll get into that just after this message. So, Ange, you were saying there about how you've been working with the team. You've got one-on-ones every week, and it's a big team, so that will take quite a while to get through as well. Not just the one-on-ones, but then doing all the admin around it. But of course, looking at things like process, like continuous improvement. Can you give me an idea of like how you're what sort of things you've been doing recently, like how you're actually improving incrementally?
It's a great question. So the last month, my model's already changed and shifted. So when I first came in, my business plan was I was really specific about who I'd acquire. Once I realised my alignments, right, I need to acquire. And then coming in, I thought if I recruit, retain and develop credit analysts and the client service manager, the CSM, those two things, if I can solve that pain point for the majority of business owners or good brokers, they'll join me. So that became sort of my model, which if you look at a large writing broker, they've got quite a big team behind. Then I started looking at AI and obviously the digital transformation that's happening sort of throughout the industry, thinking, well, gosh, you can see AI is probably going to replace the knowledge piece, which always drew me to broking and also intimidated me, this enormous amount of knowledge that you need to have. And I still think you need to have that, and you need to have people that understand the lending process and understand the different products, and able to give clients at the end of the day confidence that this is not just the right loan for them, but the best loan for them under that best interest duty, which I love. So that sort of has shifted my model a little bit in the last month to how do I provide the most seamless, frictionless loan experience so that the credit analysts and the client service managers, whose roles are all evolving, same as offshore, are going to be rewarded and challenged and involved in that process. Are they going to be, your future brokers really that are in-house, back to more sort of that customer service account management piece? Because, the reality is I bought a large book. We've got a lot of clients without even going to refer. So how do we go back and offer that really proactive service that's seamless and not as full of pain points as it is today? A lot of people are sort of saying, well, AI, is going to replace sort of offshore processing, et cetera. So for us, yes, the tech that we've been looking at together with Loan Market is around, it already renames and relabels documents, for example. So I think what I'm excited about is not necessarily not needing an offshore team, but giving everybody in the team more meaning, doing jobs like renaming documents. I mean, even getting a commercial loan recently to buy this business, there's not even online forms. Like there's a long way to go in this lending process. And so for me, I've enjoyed, because I have capacity, if we went back and you start the roots cause analysis, you start the pain points, it's everything I heard 10 years ago. It's literally working with Polly Hoynes-Robson, who I work closely with Michael Zabelberg, all of the sessions that we do in Kaizen, they're all very similar challenges with enough flex that people want to run their businesses differently. But this has really given me the confidence that solving the repetitive, the work that AI is really designed to do is just going to free up really good people to be able to give confidence to more customers. And I think that's a great model. Something perhaps controversial, I'm not sure, but the old way, even the old, loan market way of it's so hard to get established, you bleed out in the street, you you work so hard to get your first deals and to build that referral network. I just think that's going to be too difficult going forwards. My way will be to sort of try to bring through a graduate program for, banking and finance students. We've just hired our first one, and really bring them into the team, introduce them through that backbook piece because they're still studying. So you don't want any time-dependent work. Get them booking appointments, get them understanding how much value there is in an existing client, and then progress them through the model, around that client service manager, credit analyst, broker. But it's not a broker that's out having to find clients, if that makes sense. They can if they want to, but taking 2 years, 3 years, or 18 years to get a business to where you want to be, I just think it's too difficult. And with broker share at sort of 80%, it gets harder now. So if my model can provide appointments with clients that, love what a broker does, that's sort of where I'm going now around making sure the system, whether that tech, whether that systems, whether that people, make it better for the people doing the processing. I think that helps me then secure a steady chain of support staff, which is what is so hard for business owners to hire and to retain. Yeah. A lot of good support staff then want to become a broker. How do you retain them? All of that sort of stuff. So that's sort of the shift in my model, I guess. Being a non-writing director, I need to look at it differently. And I think I've always enjoyed working with brokers who want to work with referrers. Not all brokers do, and that's fine too. So I can add a lot of value to those guys. And then so scaling that piece is where I'm busy, and then looking at that, right, what other services add value to our core? And for us, that will be obviously conveyancing, so you can really go and spearhead that and start to pad out our revenue a bit and bring in-house specialists. But most importantly, give that real career path, I think, to your back-end team that I don't think it'll be obliterated by AI. I think it will free them up to be more proactive with customers. And I think they'll enjoy that, to be honest.
You mentioned there about some of the tech and sort of systems that you're using already, like the one that's sort of renaming documents. What is that? Is that something that Loan Market has proprietary? Is it a tool that's sort of off the shelf, something you built?
Yeah, there's quite a few tools around now that will do that. I know Quickly Pro obviously are launching that as well. But yes, through the MyCRM, through the roadmap that the LMG tech team have as well. But there are a lot of other options around and we're constantly getting, approached by those. And I think to your point, you just got to be nimble because what was, cutting edge last month is now almost obsolete. So it's changing and moving. And that's why I think the important piece is not the tech, but the design, the process design. And that is the piece that you need to put a lot of time into, which is difficult. Like as a business owner, writing loans and leading a team, how are you going to get back and really understand the pain points of every team member in a large business? It's very hard to do that without capacity. And I think that's the experience I can take out of those corporate roles of when we did that to see the business owner is very reliant on the people that are closest to the customer. And that's always a space that I enjoyed. But I've never been as close as the people who are processing the loan. So, a lot of business owners now don't even know how to log into MyCRM, right? And that's a good thing, but have you got the right people and are you empowering them around making the change to the process that's going to let you leverage AI? Because AI without process design would be a disaster, I would say.
And I think this is, again, something that we've been talking about even in Better Business, this year, the AI session with Adam Franklin, he talks, I think probably like half of the session on like the AI tools and prompts you can be using. But then he's a bit like, but once you've done that, like the second half of the session is, what are you going to do with that extra time? Because, there's one 100%. Thing having all this stuff. You're not just going to go swan off to a beach. Like you might want to for a little bit. The first time round, you get a couple of hours off work. But, long term, it's like, well, the second element of this has been like, where are you putting that extra time? Where are you putting that extra effort to continue delighting your customers? And for so many people, I think it is in the client-facing work or in improving the client journey, or in, maybe kind of looking at building a business. So actually having that sort of second element side of it, being like, yes, we're embracing tech, but also for what gain?
100%. Where are you putting that investment?
Exactly.
It will help you take cost out for sure, but what are you able to do with that in terms of time and money? And that's the piece I need. I think you need, in these low margin businesses, you need to realize that gain. And then, as you say, how do you use that most effectively? And I think that comes down to strategy, which is a lot of conversations I have each week with the guys running a business within a business. Who are the customers that you're not going to serve? Where is your area of influence? It's pretty hard to define these days if you're just available to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And I don't think works well enough. It'll work, but it's so difficult, and it's very painful.
Yeah. So when you look at then kind of managing the workload and running an office, so we've talked a little bit about kind of what your week looks like. Is there anything that you kind of that you've learned in the last few months where you're like, this is actually a process improvement that can help anyone with operational excellence?
And I think something that's been reinforced, which probably doesn't sound like, is that all the answers are already in the room. In this team, because it's such a quality team, and it is, I mean, it's one of the leading businesses. Like, I'm not just saying that. When you've got good people, the answers are in the room. How do you create the space and the opportunity for that to bubble up, filter through, and empower that? And that can be in any business. So I think that's been really comforting, to be honest, because coming in, from the outside into an established business, how do you sort of get underneath those layers? And I think keeping things simple and not having too many layers and not having that hierarchy is really such an asset and such an easier way to leverage and implement change because it literally ground up, and those people have such incredible insights that when they're used to doing something the same way, they don't actually realize. So fresh eyes, good teamwork, all those fundamentals, I think being curious about how we can do it differently. What do we want to do? So what are we doing well? What do we want to change? And not being too precious around any of that, I think is really exciting and a bit of fun too.
Yeah. Well, I think this is, again, something that we're seeing quite a lot of is brokers kind of hiring, mentors or coaches, because they are like saying, I need that second pair of eyes, but I maybe can't afford someone full time to do this. So just sort of having someone to come in and be like, what can I do better?
I have a jab me in the eye meeting once a month. It's like, just tell me anything, just go for it, just get it over, it's an hour. And that means people can tell you something they're really worried about, like, why aren't you going hard enough? Or why did you do that? Or why didn't you do it? And I think that's great too. Documenting processes, you need someone very detail oriented, and that's where, you've got to hire the right people for this work. In addition, those people have to be empowered because, you're navigating through different personalities that might feel that you're, questioning how they do things. Some people love, not everyone does. So it's a really interesting and exciting time, I think. The first wave of broking has been a massive success. I reckon the second wave is going to be even better, which, a lot of people say, God, how can it get past, 80%? But the client base is there now. The client base is sitting with all these small business owners across Australia. How we harness that, unlock that, and leverage that is it's up to the broker to lose it, really. So I think it's an exciting time.
That's actually a good framing. Is that I think a lot of the time, we can be a bit complacent as an industry, being like, more than 3/4 of people use us, but actually it's been like, make sure that doesn't drop. Like, how do you retain that? And now you've got those customers and you've got a strong business, or you've started a business, like making sure you kind of retain that. And that's why I think in the last few years, we've seen a lot of post-settlement care work coming in as well, not just because of the best interest duty requirement, but also I think because so many people were like, rates are changing so quickly. We need to make sure we're on a good rate. And if we aren't, then we run the risk of clawback. Or someone moving on. Do you do a lot of work on the post-settlement side of things, and kind of have you seen that?
Well, for me, when you buy a business, the valuation is really determined around the EBIT number or the track. And really the piece that's portable is that book. So being close to that book is a necessity, because that's ensuring the loan that I've taken, against the business that I bought. So that for me is where we're designing the whole new broker world. And because it's not time dependent like a refinance or someone going to auction, I can offer the part-time role to these graduates who can come in and we can test live through shadowing. Is this someone who's going to make a really valuable part of the team? If we can go to those existing clients really proactively and understand their liabilities today, where they're at, what they want to achieve, their full picture of their goals, and proactively book an appointment and say, here's where we're at, we can do X, Y, Z. That doesn't happen today a lot. I know brokers try and reprice and refinance and look after their books, but to really take the next level and to introduce new services and to put those customers in a secure portal where they're able to be working with the team they've always known, I think that's the game changer for the value of the book as well, for a lot of brokers who are looking at getting out, more than just relying on that good experience that they had and that they value. And they do come back. They don't have a reason not to come back. Everyone's doing sort of the basic level of automated email and repricing. How do you turn that into a really sort of a raving fan, that customer advocacy piece, because you know so much about them and you're able to go to them in a timely way and say, Annie, I think this is an even better solution for you now. that to me is the holy grail. And I know open banking and those things will make that a lot easier, but we don't want to wait for that. We're going to do as much work around that as we can until it happens. And to me, that's my strategy for my next wave of brokers, because I love the business that I bought and the team that are in it. But I know from experience, like, people will leave and it will hurt, and if you're not working on that pipeline of your next person who's joining you or your next strategy to grow that revenue, it can really derail you, particularly around your confidence, I think. So being super proactive on that piece for me, especially given that purchase point, it is kind of not an option.
You've talked there a bit about, the retention worry, and I'm sure many brokers listening to this will be like, yes, it's such a heartache when someone leaves, or it's such a heartache trying to find someone that you kind of gel with. But obviously then keeping them is sort of, really important. So how do you empower your staff to feel like they want to stay? Is it about culture? Is it about remuneration? Is it about incentives? Like, how do you actually try and protect your staff base?
It's about understanding the contribution they make. That thing about nobody likes to feel like they're anonymous. So are they being recognised for the work that they're doing today? How are they contributing, whichever role they're in, to the success of the business? Is that clear? Are we celebrating that? Even simple things like your monthly wrap, what's the contribution that they're making, and is that visible to everybody? And then secondly, what is it that they want? What growth are they on? The personal development plans for the people in your team. If we're not attuned to what our people want, then I think that's the first risk. So for me, it's making sure they know this is a place where we value earning and learning. Anybody that wants to contribute more, anybody that wants to grow, anybody that wants to learn can rely on that next career, on being able to earn more and get the result that they want. Not everybody, like you say, wants a big career. But a lot of people do. And as long as that challenge is there for them, a lot of guys have kind of moved, their lifestyle changes, they're having babies, they're wanting more flexibility, moving to other parts of the country, etc. All of that's pretty easy to accommodate. It's the personal connection with the person in your team. Do you understand what it is they want, and are you able to deliver it? And for me, I'm really committed to that, because I know that engine room, that back office of good support staff, is what will continue to attract and retain terrific brokers in the business. That is the harder piece to duplicate, to be honest, than to find brokers that want to write loans. The harder part is to make sure that engine is as efficient and as smart as it can be, because they are dealing with your customer, often more so than the broker.
Is there anything that you're seeing, not just from the low market broking business that you're now running, but generally in the market? Is there anything that you're seeing that you're like, I wish brokers knew about this, or I wish that there was something that they were doing that they're not?
I think that it's still very much, a lot of brokers are ex-bankers, and I see that in the team, and it's these how to sell themselves to referrers, to clients. I think, you do a lot of great conferences, that whole piece around a customer interview, taking that customer off the table before you provided the advice, really looking at that skill set around being confident around the value that they offer. I notice a lot of trepidation around putting yourself out there to tell people how you can help them, and being confident about that. And I'm talking about really experienced, good operators. They're not necessarily comfortable really selling, is probably the word that we're looking for. So I think not selling themselves to prospective staff, not selling themselves to prospective clients, not selling themselves to prospective referrers. The service, the proposition of a broker is so powerful. I think that's a bit that's overlooked. I have spoken at a couple of lender events in my time, and I do wonder if they understand what a broker actually does. It's not because they always ask you, is it just about rate? Well, no, it's about the customer's plan. It's their overall goals and objective. Rate a little later. But I remember coming in from real estate, I was the biggest, sender, saying, oh, it's just about rate. Surely it's just about rate. You just get the best rate. And they're like, rate's kind of not got a lot to do with it at the end of the day. So I think if brokers could see that together as a force, the very fractured industry, very small business owners, and really look at bigger picture and the advocacy that they need at the table, being small business owners, coming together as an industry and understanding the value collectively. As you say, we keep talking about the 77.5% or the 80% broker share, leveraging that like a moat, asking lenders to pay brokers who submit great deals more than those that don't, because the cost of a deal with no rework is not the same as the cost of a deal with plenty of rework. yet all brokers get paid the same. So I think how to get smarter around getting paid for what we do really well. And that can only be through working together. I know, there's lots of egos in every industry and all of that. But at the end of the day, the proposition of the broker is a terrific one. You're genuinely helping people achieve more is how I see it. And I think without them, it's pretty dire out there in terms of a lack of customer service. Trust in large institutions has never been so low. Trust in individuals has never been so high, So, those trusted professionals. So I think I wish the brokers could be better around one voice, I suppose, in terms of what they bring to the table for lenders and for industry and for customers. I think we're probably missing an opportunity there.
Awesome. Some great suggestions there as well, and to think as well about the remuneration model too. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about what your plans are for the year ahead and into the future, what sort of things you do to unwind and de-stress, and your advice for new brokers just starting out. And we'll get into that just after this message. So, Ange, you were talking there about, the kind of how you already changed some of the things that you've been doing the last few months in this new business. What do you have planned for the rest of the year? Like, where do you think you'll be at the end of 2026?
It's such a great question. I'm really trying to test if everything I assumed before I came into the business, because buying the business, lots of due diligence and back and forth and cash flows and lenders, etc. So testing if those assumptions are right, is what I understand to be. And then, to be honest, this whole ridiculous notion that all brokers get paid the same. I need to get into markets that are underrepresented or have bigger loan sizes is how I'm seeing it, because being in that role, we changed the customer numbers because, some brokers write 300, look after 300 customers a year, like, Sam Arthur's down at Warrnambool, 292 or something. How is that fair, to then go into somewhere like, no offense, Kimmy, Double Bay? So you sort of think, wow, that workload. So I need to look at those markets. Where's the biggest opportunity for growth, I think, for our team? That's why I love that sort of national model, national brand, no territories, be able to help the customer anywhere. So I think that definitely on the radar. I'd love to think that we're open beyond just St Kilda Road, Melbourne, would probably be my first one. Secondly, I really need to bring in-house some specialist skill sets around commercial lending and asset finance. They're the probably obvious one. And thirdly, I think the services that add the most value to the core. I think running in-house conveyancing and running a great process that isn't dated, shall we say, and isn't clunky, frictionless with some of the work that we're doing around the tech piece. I can see how we can bolt that on pretty beautifully, pretty seamlessly. So that also adds a lot of value to our referrers. So I'm looking forward to really driving that piece, which I think gives me something to put my teeth into, and I'm not sort of annoying and pestering the team to it. Already doing a lot very well, and it's more of a tweak than a transformation. So making sure I'm giving them the space to do the work.
Yeah. And the referral piece, I think, is also really interesting. Like, when you're just starting out, so many brokers are like, how do I get my own referral partners? Because they already have broker partners. They already know someone. They don't really want to be harassed by me and probably 20 other brokers who are looking for a referral partner. What would you advise them to do if they're looking at getting, a conveyancer or a buyer's agent or real estate agent on board?
I think look at your strategy. Do you really want it? Is my first question. What have you done to try? Oh, I looked on their website. It said they work with a broker. Have you called them?
Try. Okay.
Don't email them. Everybody emails and says, they didn't email me back. Shock. Brokers get more emails than anyone we know, an agent. Have you referred them an appraisal or an opportunity? Have you gone to, if you're talking about an agent or an accountant, etc., have you gone to an open for inspection? Have you gone to any of their auctions? Have you read any of their content? How are you standing out? Why should they work with you? And there's probably very good reason. But I think we automatically assume they're already working with somebody, even when they're not, because I've had these conversations with so many people over the years. And then really think about your model. Are you somebody who's better suited to working as property manager? Are you somebody that wants to be available on the phone all the time? Are you happy to be available weekends and after hours? Lots of brokers don't want that. And I think they're clever that they design their model not to be reliant on those referrers if they don't want that kind of intensity. So they have a different strategy about working other referral sources or existing clients. But I think right now there's a massive opportunity to work with agents and property managers and, given the market and the interest rate rises. And I think really helping them understand what the change in rate means for buyers. What does it mean for sellers? I've gone with lots of brokers into sales meetings and they talk about how they're setting the BBSY swap rate. I'm like, what are you talking about? Talk about something that adds value to the salespeople. Talk about, how you got a loan approved and it meant the buyer was able to offer X and it got the deal done. Show them that a buyer, with $1 million to spend is different depending on the lender you're with. Break down the scenario. And I think not take yourself too seriously would be my biggest one. It's hard because they're so nervous about, I really need this opportunity. But I don't see a lot of effort, if I'm honest. So sending someone an email is not effort. I don't think that would be have a real crack would be my first piece of advice.
Have a real crack. And the other thing I want to ask you about is obviously you mentioned about, how it can be a kind of industry where people just work really long hours. And I think increasingly, over the last 5 years, I think particularly we've seen broking really change both in compliance, but also professionalization. And people just now working really, really long hours. So a lot of what we do here at The Advisor is sort of, talking to people and being like, just remember to put in guardrails to have a life, basically, at the end of the day, and don't do it at the expense of your happiness and at the expense of your own well-being. And so often we kind of do this Wellness Wednesday piece on social media where we ask people what they do to unwind and de-stress, really as a weekly reminder to people to unwind and de-stress, plus because I'm just nosy and I want to know what everyone's hobbies are. So if you think about, your experience in the broking industry generally, I mean, there is a lot of kind of concerns about people burning out and people working too hard. What do you think brokers should be doing to decompress after a kind of a stressful conversation, or if something's gone wrong with a loan?
It's a great question. I'm very structured around the week. I always have been around what's in my calendar is what we'll do. And I think part of the challenge of the broking industry is the freedom. There is no end time. So you can just morph into huge hours, as say. So for me, I've designed the week around golf, like a bloke. So Wednesday morning is golf. I think empower yourself earlier to be strict on what are the things that are going to de-stress and give you that time off. So for me, I decided, I was somebody who worked incredibly hard and long hours and loved and enjoyed that. And sort of being able to do nothing, there's nothing worse than going on a holiday when you don't need one, by the way, if you've sort of ever done that. So for me with gardening, when can I get that in? It's funny how nature really does help that healing, that exhale, that peace. And then golf, because you can't actually be uptight playing golf. It's really very annoying. It's counterintuitive. You have to be all sort of, loosey-goosey and get your shoulders going. You can't be uptight playing golf. So I think after 9 holes of golf in the middle of your week, when you're back to dealing with people and issues, you're in a better frame of mind. And I think that helps that energy piece, which is really then makes you feel better, because it's awful if you're stressed and you're taking it out on people, you're just feeling worse and the cycle's, just getting worse and worse. Whereas if you can make sure at least that time is carved out in the week, for me, it has to be, your Sunday morning run, your Wednesday golf. Those things are kind of non-negotiable. That really helps you keep your mind sharp, I think, and close to nature, which I think really has that healing, that sort of de-stressing ability. Even just looking at your backdrop, I feel calm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. I'm a gardener myself, so I love actually mowing the lawn is my kind of meditative state. Although even every time I do it, my neighbors always laughing at me. They're like, get your husband to do it. I'm like, no, this is my time.
Yeah, it's a good one, mowing the lawn. I think no one can bother you when you mow the lawn, the noise, the motion, etc.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. But it also makes me sound old and boring, but I really love to read too. So I think try to get sort of some good fiction, some good trash, something that takes your mind and transports it, even if it's an hour, I think is a really nice way to just get your energy back.
Any book recommendations?
At the moment, I'm reading A Room Made of Leaves.
Oh, I haven't read that. Okay, I'll pop it on the list. So in closing, Ange, just sort of looking at what you've been doing and what you've been learning over the last few months as you've kind of moved into the broking space directly, what advice would you give to anyone who's just starting out in this industry?
Be really clear about your strategy. And I think don't give yourself too long. Set higher goals. I think 50 million is the new 30 million in broking, in terms of if you take too long to get there, it actually gets harder. Join a business, I would say, or be in an environment. You don't necessarily have to join that business where you are exposed to a lot of scenarios. If it takes you too long to become productive, you'll just get miserable and leave. is how I see it as a new broker. I think it's really tough. It's that whole chicken and egg, and everyone will say, put on support staff before you need it, but sometimes you can't afford that. So it's a stressful time when the bills are rolling in and there's no sight of revenue. And, in residential, at least, it's a long way off, getting to a receipted settlement by the time you finally find the client, that you finally get a deal approved and finally get settled and it finally gets paid. That's a long time, if depending, how much you've got in your life. So, yeah, be clear on your strategy, set high goals, but be in an environment, whatever that looks like, where you're exposed to enough lending that you can learn quickly, that you are around good operators so that you are successful.
Yeah,
that would be fine.
Awesome. Ange, thanks so much for sharing your story here on the New Broker podcast, and best of luck with the rest of the year as you build the Loan Market St Kilda office and beyond, in looking at bringing in new brokers too. We look forward to seeing what happens next for you in the year ahead.
Thank you so much.
If you've got any questions for me or for Ange, do feel free to reach out. You can reach me at editor@theadvisor.com.au and Ange McNaughton at Loan Market St Kilda. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer all your questions. I've just thrown her under the bus there. And if anyone wanting to find out more about what brokers are doing to build their businesses, do check out all the podcasts on the Advisor Podcast Network. We've got about 10 years worth now of back catalogue for you to plow through with new brokers, elite brokers, women in finance, lenders, aggregators, you name it, we've probably got it. And there's so much great advice in those podcast hours for you as well. For anyone else, we hope you have a fab week, and we'll catch you next time for another episode on the Advisor Podcast Network.